When you look at China, we have to ask you what you make of Huawei coming out with this phone that looks like they use technology, the exact technology that there are export controls on China and Chinese companies, CSMIC and also Huawei, both on the entities list, to make sure that China actually doesn't have these capabilities, yet a phone arrives. Do you think the export controls that are on China right now are working?
They're not being enforced. SMIC has American component parts. This 7-nanometer chip is a very advanced chip, and it's now in Huawei's 5G smartphone. This is very disturbing and a major violation of our export control laws. I sent a letter today to Secretary Raimondo, and I have jurisdiction over BIS, which is a Bureau of Industry and Security, in charge of export control, because this was not enforced. And now they've got this very advanced technology, 7-nanometer chip. You know, when you look at the hypersonic program, that was built on the backbone of American technology. When it comes to the 7-nanometer chip, and you look at things like AI and the future of warfare, which will involve this kind of semiconductor chip, that is what is most disturbing to me. Is that now China, they're very good. They don't really invent things. They're very good at stealing our technology. And this is another good example. And you know, the timing, Anne-Marie, this was announced the day that Secretary Raimondo left Beijing, with a real slap in the face that, hey, now we got your technology. We got your most advanced semiconductor chip. We got to stop doing this. We got to stop selling to China our most advanced technology that they then that will turn and use against us if, God forbid, we have a conflict in the Pacific.
Well, so then, Congressman, is your committee working up sanctions on SMIC, or should we be talking about a total severing, a total cutoff of our technological relationship with China at this point?
You know, we can't cut all trade, but I would argue that with respect to certain sectors, like the advanced semiconductor chips, like AI, like quantum computing. This is something I've talked to the Commerce Department about, making it more rather than company specific, because China will change the name of the companies. But if you make it sector specific, to me, that's a better way to handle this. That way, all exports regarding AI cannot be exported to China. All exports regarding quantum and advanced semiconductor chips. And that way you deal with it in a very, I think, a broader blanket that I think would apply. We're going to have commerce with China. They're a big market for the United States, and we buy a lot from them. But when it comes to national security supply chain, like semiconductors, like critical minerals, rare earth minerals, and medical, we need to start pulling that supply chain out. The reason I introduced the Chips for America Act and got it passed was Secretary Pompeo came to me and said, we got to pull supply chain out of Taiwan because TSMC controls 90% of the advanced semiconductor manufacturing for the world. So imagine a scenario where China invades Taiwan with a blockade and cutting the sea cable. Then they either own or will break 90% of the world's advanced semiconductor chip manufacturing.
When you look at what happened this week, we saw Kim Jong-un make his way to Russia to meet with President Putin. The individual who could probably put the pressure on both those two leaders, those dictators, would be Xi Jinping. Do you think it's wise the administration still seeks a meeting with Xi Jinping to try to make sure at least they're putting pressure on Beijing to then put more of a pressure on both its neighbors in Russia and in North Korea?
Look, I think it's always good to have meetings and have conversations, but you don't concede certain things. I think, you know, we saw like certain export controls were pulled back prior to these meetings. You don't make concessions before just to have a meeting in and of itself. You have to negotiate out of strength and leverage, not out of weakness. And that's my concern about, the meetings that took place. I don't think China's going to ever talk Kim Jong-un down because, Chairman Xi is a direct ally of Putin. I mean, they made this unholy alliance at the Beijing Olympics just weeks before the invasion into Ukraine. And the idea that they're not joined at the hip is absolutely false. I mean, this is a alliance of China, Russia, Iran, and North Korea. North Korea is going to start putting their stuff in. Iran's already putting their drones into Ukraine. We're even seeing, mercenaries from Cuba, going into Russia and into the Ukraine fight. So this is really playing out very dramatically between these dictators and the rest of the free world.